whole career and experience has been focused on association. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Like Brett said, please interrupt. I'm going to share my lens, some of our experience. I've been in New Zealand, connected to New Zealand for over 15 years, permanent resident here, love New Zealand, and have also worked with other groups in other countries and in the States. So I'm going to try to share. Brett, you can tell me if, let's see, I'm gonna do start.
You can see that. Yep.
Okay. Um, Let me just move us out of the way so I can get us started and make sure you guys can see it okay. Um,
F5. Oh, yeah.
oh, do you see, oops, hold on one second. Okay. Usually I'm on the back end of these things. So when I'm doing my own slides, let's go back. Okay. Can you see it right now? All
Yes.
right. Thanks, Brett. Okay. So, so like Brett said, I've worked with previously the Digital Experience Institute. I worked with a group, PCMA, the Professional Conference Management Association. They're global. They have 8,000 members globally, but they're based in the States. And my earlier career, I was there and worked through working with different associations, working on the education. We were kind of known as the industry incubator. And so I'm going to walk you through one of those data points that helped us make some decisions and to talk through what you might currently be sitting on that can help you make some decisions. And then I also have done, along with PCMA, where we were experimenting. I'll tell you more about that. I've worked with other organizations across the board, from medical associations like American Heart and International Stroke, and a number of different ones, epilepsy, to trade organizations, to veterinary organizations. And so the data, working with all of them, I'll share. I do have a couple case studies, but I'm going to share data from my event just to kind of give a case study, but we're going to go more into just the talking. Okay. But you can just see my big slide, right? You don't see presentation mode.
No, we see everything good.
Okay, perfect. I have dual screens, so I just wanted to make sure. Okay, so the first place I want to start was if I asked you right now, do you know who's about to leave your organization? Who's about to become your most loyal members? And who you've never reached but you could? One of the things we're going to talk about today is I think data is overwhelming and people think you need to have the right dashboard or the right technology, but really it's about knowing what you're trying to answer first and then looking at the data that you have to do that. One thing to also think about, and I want to talk more about this throughout, is what is one decision your organization is currently making that would benefit from better data? So, ways that I've seen data help groups that we worked with, and from my own background, was to better understand our member behavior, to identify membership growth. Data has been a huge membership growth with how we provide value, if we are providing value, what the ROI back is, and creating a pipeline for those new members and keeping them committed. Support stronger board decisions, the data that we could give to our board to answer the questions that they were looking for the next steps. Turning insight into action, data that can be turned quickly to see what the result is. It doesn't have to be a big project, it could be taking little bites, and to lead with greater confidence. So for this, I'm going to walk you through a little bit about standard and predictive signals, which we've found, and then talk about PCMA and how we proved the data with what we did with that. So for predictive, I'm going to tell you this story. Okay, so this all started when I was with PCMA back in 2008, 2009. PCMA helps with the education for the senior level individuals planning conferences for the medical, for corporate. So those would be the members. And when the recession started, they were very concerned about digital and hybrid, and are our people going to come in person? So our president at the time decided to challenge us and start creating a hybrid digital event. And we were known as the industry incubator. So we wanted to experiment. So if we failed, our members can learn from it. And if we succeeded with the different things that we were trying, experiments or pilots, they could succeed from that. So when we started, the first thing she said is, you need to figure this out. And we said, okay, let's not fail. Let's figure out how we're going to do this. And we started really small. And it was all about the technology. And really quickly, we decided it wasn't about the technology, it was about the data. And so all of our conversations started going in. We started doing the live streaming, but then the board wanted to know, our executive suite wanted to know, is what is the impact? What we're spending money doing this, what is the impact? And we were getting firsthand people saying they're becoming members. We would see them at events. They weren't engaged and they were now engaging. We looked around the industry to see what data sets we could look at, and there were none. So this was the moment that we then took our standard data, where it was just attendance, and started looking at predictive signals. We wanted to start looking at the data we had already, and then how could we use that to help answer some of these questions. And some of the predictive, when you're looking at predictive, it's going from like how many attended to how many were there who are now drifting away, or people that are new, what was their experience and how can that get you to additional, and what kind of financial impact are they going to come back for your first timers, and are they going to tell other people? So this is something to think about, is, who's drifting away, who is with you right now that even wants to get more involved, and who's not with you that wants to be with you. I promise more questions are coming. I'm just going to get through kind of laying the set for the beta. So this is where we were with PCMA. Along with doing it for our own team, we decided to try this digital event for the industry. And so when we started it, we went through, and on a back sheet of a piece of paper, I kind of mapped out what we were looking for. And I sat down with our vice president of technology. We looked at all of the data points that we had already. And what we did was we talked with our CEO. We said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the first hybrid event, which we did, the digital event. Hybrid is where there was our flagship in-person event. And then we started doing it for a couple of our other events. And then we had an online presence. So this is all for those who joined us online to engage with those that were also on site. In 2012 was our first one. And so what we did was we basically put a marker on our data and said anyone who attended in 2021 and had not attended in person 5 years or more, what did they do afterwards? And we looked at the ROI, the return on the investment of that individual. And then we also looked at the return on engagement, which was really important for our leadership team. So what we found, this is just kind of a snapshot of one individual. But what we found was after we tagged them the first year, we watched to see what they did. And this was kind of what we saw trending. They attended online. And then the next year, they attended more digital events and bought online courses that we had. The next year in 2012, 2 years later, they became a member and they attended the hybrid event. So they didn't invest in coming in person, but they were able to engage with us. In 2015, they attended the in-person event, our flagship event, and then they renewed their membership. In 2016, they continued partnership, engage in learning programs for the online. So we had other online learning programs that they came. By 2017, they had now become a member. They had renewed, they had attended online, they had bought online products, and now they're coming in person. So the information that we were receiving from the people who were coming online were that they were telling us they were becoming members. We now had the data. This was an overview of high level of what we brought in over those 4 years. So we put this all out there. There wasn't data, so we actually wrote a white paper and put this out to the industry. We identified almost 4,000 new prospects. We brought in over $1 million direct revenue for that, and it's compounding. So one person ended up compounding. If you start adding all their registrations and all their memberships and all their online products, we had over 400,000 engagement points. So that was website views, that was email views, that was just engaging with us. And we had 1,700 become, almost 1,800 become members. What we were looking for was, is what we're hearing actually happening? Is what we're doing being, is this investment in what we're doing worth it? Are we providing value to our members? And it became a pipeline for us to engage the members who couldn't be there and to get prospects. At one point, my title was Director of Experience Marketing. It was having them come in to experience. And this is not a promotion for hybrid events. I'm just sharing the data on kind of how we did this and helping our decisions. We attracted people who were not attending in person, which was one of our goals, and engagement was a long game for us. We weren't monetizing just on the event day, but we were actually looking at what the impact was for those individuals that came after. So this was, like I said, for each group, and I have the white paper if anybody wants to see it, or breaks it all down. But we looked at, for our markers, the face-to-face registrations, the new memberships, the renewal memberships, and the online products. So that was what we decided to look in those 4 buckets. And then it answered our questions to our board, and then it answered to the industry and what we were experimenting, that it didn't cannibalize the in-person, that they still came. We found new audiences. It was long-term, and the data made the invincible visible. So it actually gave us, and from this moment on, and always during the events, looking at the people who weren't coming along with the consulting, like I said, across the different medical organizations, and we worked with university, looking at their data points on people who are coming and what they've done, would help us determine where they need to go with their products. So I'm going to pause there, and then we're going to go just into what this means for the New Zealand associations. I know this is big. I know those were big numbers that we tracked, but everything is scalable with just looking at, and this is where we're going to go into questions we all individually can ask and have open up for our conversation. So, Brett, is it good to pause here, or should I just keep going into opening up into these next questions? Oh, we're good? Okay, I'll keep going. All right. I still
Sorry,
got
yeah,
everyone
pause
with.
it. Yeah. Sorry, I was talking to you, but I forgot I was on mute. Sorry.
That's okay. Okay. All right. And I'm happy to answer any questions people have. So what does this mean? What does this mean for us? And this is a conversation with all of us. Well, one thing that's currently happening is this generational shift. And this is something that I'm really interested in the moment, is that by 2030, less than 4 years, millennials and Gen Z will represent nearly three-fourths, 74% of the workforce. And this is according to Deloitte's global recent study on this. So engagement patterns are changing, more digital participation, shorter commitment cycles, greater focus on topic-based learning. So understanding the patterns of what you currently have while you're going through some of these changes with your membership evolving is something that we should all be, it's less than 4 years away, be thinking about. And I'm interested to see what your thoughts and your perspectives and what you're seeing. But I know from what I'm seeing in reports, participation shifting. It's not just younger generations, it's just the generations itself. And it's not stereotyping because people show up differently, but commitments are shorter. We're seeing this, and that the generation's there. So it's we're engaging them or if we're connecting with them and how we're doing that based off of our data. So these are some questions for us to talk through. Is where is engagement growing? Where is it shrinking? Is it, you could have younger, it could be for different groups we've worked with. It could be based on where they career stage and where they are, or it could be, um, segments, different groups that you have that come in, and it could be a different type of membership. What does a member look like 12 months before they don't renew? That could be a snapshot to say, what's going on in their space before they don't do that renewal. What content turns that first touch point into a long-term relationship where you're really looking at the value points? How are younger professionals engaging differently with your organizations? There's been a lot of studies coming out about what younger generations are looking for, that, it's more about potentially career development and developing skills than it is, the loyalty. So it's figuring out, looking at your data on how they're showing up with you and what can you learn from that so you can better serve that. And what decisions would your leadership team make differently if these patterns were visible? Okay, so this is where I've talked way too much. I have a clock here, and I turned my phone off so I won't get it. Okay, so we're 20 minutes in. Um, so I'd like to open this up to the group with some of these questions. And actually, before this, I'm gonna share what I hope we walk away with this conversation. So, data doesn't make decisions, but good leaders with data who see it clearly before they decide make good decisions. Shifting from reporting to predictive singles is a leadership decision, not a technology one. It's kind of reporting out the scores of the game versus looking at your stats during the game and where you're going to make some changes. Um, your organization probably sits on more data than you realize. The question is whether you use it. And data engagement tells a generational story. And reading it now will help you stay relevant. So 5 years from now, if you're looking at your data and seeing where the engagement is, could make a big difference in what you're planning for. All right, so this is where I'm going to go with questions. If anything, if we just have a thought about it, know that you have the data. Oh, Brett, I see your hand up.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Look, I'm going to start it off. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because
please.
because of what it is. Is it what's going through my mind at the moment is that yes, we need the data, and I'm going to get to that later on. But it's like, what is engagement? Like you look at this here now, where it's like, we've got 330 members and we've got 17 people here. How are the other 315 or 313 people actually engaging with our association or any association? So when you look at the Gen Y and Gen Z, or the millennials, call them whatever you like, is that what does that look like? What does engagement look like? Or is there any trends around that? Because if it's not digital and if it's not turning up on the day, what is engagement? I haven't got an answer, by the way.
I think it's a fascinating question. It's something I'm really interested in right now. But I'd love to hear other thoughts on what do you think the engagement means? It's a really good question for all of us and then individually too.
But because I think we've all got them, haven't we? We've all got
Yeah.
these members that we don't hear from. They open their newsletter, all that sort of stuff, and you don't see them at any events, but they're the first ones to join every single year. So they must get their engagement from somewhere else. We all have them. Wouldn't you agree?
I was going to make a comment, Brett, because I think there's probably silent engagement that we don't see, and that's okay. But it does probably just create a bit of anxiety because we don't know, because it's silent, we don't know how people are, yeah, how people are feeling about the information they're engaging with, or what they're thinking about the organization, or
Yeah.
so therefore we can't make decisions relating to them based on data because we get no data back. Yeah.
And that's probably the question to Jen. How do we get that data of those silent members or whatever they are? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because that's tricky, isn't it?
Well, the first step is isolating that, identifying it. So it's great that you've identified that you have silent members, and then lasering into those members on, do they see value? What is it? What's the value that of why they're part of your organization? Is it credentials that they need the education and they can get that online, but they're not engaged with the in-person events? Is it that they are loyal and they like to support an organization, or how are they getting that value? So different ways you could do it is like isolate it. And I even had I'm embarrassed to share this, but I was part of a group and I wasn't really showing up. And so the guy who was running the group identified people who did not were low on the engagement, and he called me out. He called me out as a lurker. He's like, "You're a lurker." And I was the one in the back of the room, but I was learning about something new and I didn't feel I had yet a voice to really speak up. What he did was he scheduled 20 calls. He picked people that he saw in the engagement that were not engaging, and talked to us and talked about our pain points and talked about and it helped him then determine what that value is. So it could be conversations, it could be surveys, it could be figuring out what those value points are. Because if they don't see value and it's not just a loyalty thing, they could be the one who's not going to renew 12 months from now.
April, May.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I have a diverse group, like we all do. I have new trainees who are gastroenterologists, so they're like in their mid 20s, and then I have senior doctors who are in their 60s. And one thing I find with my younger guys is they're not as engaged at a face to face because maybe they're busy, but they love it if you text them. They love it if you send them a social media post or do something. And one thing we've started doing with our new members, and I'm going to give a shout out to Donna because she mentioned this at another meeting, is I actually get on the phone with each of our new members and I have a wee conversation with them. I thank them for joining, and I ask them the question how they most like to be contacted and why they joined. And it's helped me focus my events, social media, communication to those different diversified groups. But it's taken a lot of effort on my point. It takes like, I don't know, a couple of hours a week to focus on them. But they're the key reason I'm here. So without members, I don't have a job. So it's worth the effort, I guess. That's me.
Thank you for sharing that. That's brilliant. What is one takeaway from all these calls that you've had? What is one takeaway or something that you didn't expect that came up in this process?
Well, because they're all doctors, I really didn't expect all of them to want to take the time to actually talk. I just felt, they're all gastroenterologists, they're working in a busy health system. Everybody reads the news about what's happening here in New Zealand. And sometimes I'm the person who has to disengage the phone because they simply just want to talk. Mm-hmm. So it's nice. I mean, my organization is set up for gastroenterologists. It's a member organization for them. So I found that if I gave them the opportunity to talk and tell me what they wanted from the society, mm-hmm. so many of them had so much to say. But when we put a survey out, none of them replied to the survey. Mm-hmm. So it's just interesting, really, really interesting. I felt that face-to-face worked for me. But we have a small, finite number of members that we could ever have. There's only 220 gastroenterologists in New Zealand, and that's the largest my group can become. So there you go.
That's brilliant. That's so powerful to have those conversations. And, I've found that some of the harder conversations, if you get somebody who's not as happy with an experience, that you can learn even more, or looking at survey results. And if there's a way to do incentives for surveys about, maybe they can win a free registration or a free online or something to get more groups to do your survey, but to also make sure that the questions in your survey are all provide something really valuable, and it's not death by survey where you have 30 questions for them to get through, but that can also be valuable. I've seen groups do that also with, the students where you're going and your early emerging professionals, and how you bridge that gap and what they're looking for and how you create for them. Any other thoughts on how your group is currently collecting, or how you would address that, or if you've noticed a pattern in your data that has changed a decision that you're working on?
Um, with us, so I'm with the New Zealand Vet Association. We have a couple of different platforms that we use. So we have a different platform for our events versus our membership. Um, and so we have regional networks, conferences, um, the surveys, the social media. And I think for me, it's getting all of that into a cohesive system where it's easy to sort. And currently sort of online looking at different tools, and finding it hard to put something together that is maintainable as well.
Mhm.
Um, so that's kind of been the sticking point, to before we even get to these questions, is actually being able to organize the data,
Mhm.
all of it, from different platforms, and making it stick that way. Yeah.
Have you, and that's incredibly common, and having all that data, a lot of times we have too much data, right? And it's trying to figure
Hmm.
out how to create apples to apples. The good news is with AI and a lot more of the technology now, it's a lot light, a much lighter lift than it was back a decade ago when we were going through this, through our ROI report. But I guess the first step would be looking at what's the number one question. If you could answer this one question, what would that be? And then looking at a potential snapshot that would help with that. Have you had an opportunity yet to look at, if you could answer any question, what would it be to help laser that in, have a focus on that?
Not really. Um, the association are quite careful with the whole AI aspect.
Mhm.
So um, I think we've just put together like a working group situation where it's slowly. Um, so yeah, I've been essentially tasked with being able to pull reports together, but like you said, there's no question yet. So it's kind of that starting point is like, well, yeah, hard to find.
Yeah. I have found, because working through all of the groups that we've worked with, we go through and do the data, but is identifying those key questions. If they're your questions, if it's your board questions, and then not feeling overwhelmed, that you can start with just little, and even Excel spreadsheets and things, even if it's not
Mm.
AI, there's a lot of things that you can do where you can segment and laser in on different data. But that's a really valid challenge. What question do you wish your data could answer right now?
I mean, some of the questions that you popped up on here where you were like tracking the member, I think that would be really beneficial, because what we're finding is there is that age group and people engaging in different ways. So when it comes to emails, you'll find most of our members are okay with emails, probably a limited the social media aspect. And then like our new graduates are definitely not as engaged and are not as loyal to staying as a member. And sometimes because members join individually, but they can also join like their practice will join them.
Mhm.
So it's because it's part of their contract. So it's breaking that barrier of it's a work benefit that they're a member,
Mhm.
actually finding that, when they leave or they're in a position where they have to pay for themselves,
Mhm.
um, that they still see the benefit.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, there's lots of different aspects to it.
Mhm. But other thoughts? Does anyone else have any? Yep.
Randy.
Um, I guess I've also been struggling a little bit with the same thing Kayla has in terms of having a lot of data and not being entirely certain what to do with it. And I'm still sort of trying to figure out the sort of approach to take. And what I was thinking, and I'd be interested to hear from you and from others if this is a sensible approach, is to make like a sort of member journey map. We're an association of librarians, so we have people coming in and sort of engaging with us at different career points.
Mhm.
So we might have someone who's new to being a manager in a public library. We will also have a group of members who are nearing retirement or our life members who are past retirement. And I'm still sort of figuring out how to put it together visually.
Mhm.
But that's sort of what I was thinking in terms of mapping the engagement points based on career progression,
Mhm.
and sort of getting data around that so that we could see how we're keeping folks tied in throughout their career progression. Is that a sensible approach, or is there another methodology that would be more useful?
I I think it's a great approach. I mean, you're lasering in into the value that you're adding in the different stages, and then you're also creating them their next step with you to stay engaged with you. And by segmenting the data, you're looking at what that member or that member type, that career stage, what the value is. And if you're providing them value, and with everything now, with the generations changing and how people are engaging differently, their values may be changing too, right? Like, or the way that they receive it. It might be the networking and the education and your resources, but the way that you have that. So I personally think that that is a really great way of doing that and looking at just starting where you can and starting with the data that you have and breaking it down into those and just saying, okay, we're just going to focus on answering these questions and having these three stage groups or whatever it is so that you have your focus and then your data can kind of work for you as you're lasering into that. Um, any other ideas and thoughts with that?
So if we're saying that the workforce 74% is going to be the younger generation, let's say, and you know, should is that something that we should be looking at as well and getting their data? Because like we can all sit in a room and go, hey, this is what we should be doing, but should we get them involved as well? And what's the trends? Do you have any trends there, or what do you suggest on that one?
With the youngers? Well, yes, I'm very interested in this. I'm working on some stuff within this space right now, but they're seeing with the younger generations, and I find generations fascinating with what because it's all about their formative years, right? And so I've been listening to some more reading reports and listening to individuals and perspectives. And one of the women mentioned before that her younger group likes to do the social media and post and likes to do the texting, which is the younger generations have said, the Gen Zs, that's something that they grew up with in high school and college and now into the workforce coming through COVID. So they expect that constant communication, that quick hit, that their access to people. Um, it's kind of, I've heard mixed reviews on if they want to be on person or digital. Some people say no, they just want to connect in person. But they're also highly digital. So 60% or more, based on different global reports right now, are saying that they like to become digital first. So it could be a bridge into the organization and seeing a lot of I have 25 years in the experience. My father was big in associations. It was a big part of his career. I've seen associations over the years, and the younger generations, the being a member because of the pride of being the member. Hopefully, a lot of groups still are, but the younger generations, it's more about career development and it's about skills. Everything's changing so quickly. Their worlds are changing so quickly, and it's with whatever you provide to them, is that translating into a way that they, need to engage? But I also had surprises when I was doing the hybrid event, and I was a director of member relations, membership, and all our chapters and everything too. So I kind of had the previous. So I come into this all with a big heart for membership. We were doing this thinking we were actually doing it to get we had the senior level people. We were looking to get their teams to support them and to give them access to education. But then we would see some of our senior members would come online, and I'd reach out to them and say, why, you weren't here this year, you were online. And they said, oh, I had to take care of my parents. We had a health, issue, and I'm the caretaker. Or other people who, again, weren't there, but they either had a job change but wanted to stay engaged, or they had their family extended and they couldn't leave. It was too much pressure on the family. So we started learning different things. So even though we say Gen Z or the millennials, you might be seeing that with the doctors, or other individuals. Other thoughts? Is that helpful? Did that help to share a couple insights of what we're seeing so far?
Yep,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay. Um, what other thoughts? What are you seeing with the younger generations, or what are your thoughts? I find that stat staggering, the 74% in 4 years.
What I'm hearing, and I haven't experienced it myself, is that they don't, as you said before, they don't like phone calls. They want text, they want email.
No,
Well, no, they're comfortable with that. Is that right, Donna? Or
no, they hate phone calls.
yeah, that's what I
Don't
mean.
you
Yeah, yeah,
don't phone them.
yeah. Don't phone them because they find that very uncomfortable. They just want they've got a phone, just text me or SMS me or
Yep.
WhatsApp or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Would that be right? Who
Yeah,
else is
that's what
finding
I
that?
found out, Brett. When I contact my younger trainees, I don't call them firsthand. I text them and ask them if they would be okay for me to call. And I've actually had some of them say no. So I have a conversation over text with them, which, I'm in my late 50s. I find that bloody irritating. But anyway, I have to do what I have to do to get what I need. It's what it is.
Um, I was given the recent example of a group and a kind of a network association type group coming together for an event, and the organising committee having organised for the team badges, which indicated whether you were someone who liked to engage socially in the breaks or not. And that it was a techie group, so you kind of got more, but it was kind of picking up on the more recognition of neurodiversity and the more recognition of different styles of wanting to engage with people. So, yeah, I find it fascinating. I think there's lots of different things that we can try.
We
That
had
is
that.
very fascinating, but then to me, you're labeling people, and I
Yeah,
personally don't like
yeah.
labels. Yeah.
But this is actually giving them the choice. So this
Yeah.
isn't. I'm assuming that's the reason. The reason that the choice was about, I'm open to having a conversation, or I'm open to. So it was about them kind of letting people know, and they didn't have to wear it. It was over to them whether they wanted to or not. But it just gave people some, I guess, license. Yeah.
We recently held a event for cytologists in New Zealand, and to start with, they wanted it all online because that's the way they'd been doing it, and they wanted us to run it for them online. So I did, and I booked a room for the 4 people that wanted to attend in person. And then once the people online found out that they had the option to attend in person, I ended up with 60 attending in person and only about 3 online, which was really interesting because they are a younger group, the latest generation of people coming through. I just find with it, because our people are med lab scientists, and I just find that they prefer networking face to face.
After, that's really interesting to have that. Afterwards, did they share, or was there any feedback on
Yes.
what they valued the most? Or
Yeah, a lot of them come back and say that they really liked the richness of the face to face, and they felt that they could ask questions to colleagues, and maybe in a forum like this, you can all see that it's me that's asking the question. But face to face, you could just take someone aside and say, well, that was really interesting what you said. I'd like to ask you about this. So they don't feel that embarrassment of everyone on screen knowing who's talking and what question they're asking.
That's really interesting.
Mm.
Well, and does anyone ask these questions when you have new members or someone come to an event on how do they like to be communicated to? Or, would there be an opportunity to add a question or two? It's kind of like when you sign up for personal things and they say, how do you want to be contacted? Do you want email? Do you want, do you want text? Would there be some opportunity to do that to learn a little bit more about how your members want to engage?
It's a good idea.
We're going to add that to our member profile now, so that people can actually say, I prefer. I mean, they won't get a choice about the email newsletters because that's how you find out what's happening.
Yeah.
But personal contact, I think that can be a really good way of doing it. So we don't have many young people.
Yeah. Focus groups can be another great way. Getting a segment of group of whoever in your membership you're trying to cater or answer those questions, so that you can get some more insight. Along with the quantitative, you can get some qualitative information. What other thoughts or challenges? What else do you wish your data could answer right now?
Why members don't renew. Sorry, Jenny.
That's fine, Donna.
Yeah, I would love to know why members don't renew. But I'd say 90% of them don't tell us. And we ask, but yeah.
Our rules state that if they don't resign and write or email or phone call or whatever, that they're liable for their fees for that year. And we just send out a wee email for those that haven't renewed with that blurb in the bottom, and they come straight back to you and they'll tell you why. But you don't have to ask them why. They'll just say, well, I've left the country, or I've left my job, or caring for a parent, whatever.
That's
Our
nice. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, our membership administrator does actually call our people that aren't renewing. So it's one thing we do have a decent data set on, and we know the main sort of reasons. And because we're an aging workforce, like a few of us out there, often it's retirement or they're leaving the industry. It's not often because they've decided that they don't value us. It's because they are departing, which is kind of good news, I suppose. But it's important that we bring in new members. But our challenge was data, and we seem to be coping, and I mean we actually have, and Donna and Brett are aware of our situation at CDANS, is that we have a CRM system, an AMS system, but the event functionality and the email functionality doesn't work. So I have them on separate platforms. So we use MailChimp And then I just, for free stuff, I use Zoom and we use Little Reggie for paid stuff. So we're obviously missing out on a massive amount of data with regard to member engagement. How huge a problem is that? Is it the norm for associations to have the whole thing bolted together so that you can have that visibility? Or
I know.
But I'd love to hear from you guys. I mean, I think it depends on the size of the organization. From the groups that we've worked with, some have, you know, dashboards that you can connect, things to, but then there's other data where it can be a very simple. When we were doing ours years ago, it was very segmented. We had to do apples to apples, and we had to pull out literally attendee list, and all the, like, literally we were just pulling. It was not a big flash dashboard. It was not a big data set. So even if you don't have the big data set, there's ways that you can still get valuable, information. Um, what would others? I think it just depends on the group, but what are some of the others seeing or experiencing?
Um, I'll answer Jenny's question because we've got a very similar database. We've just paid to be able to send all of our engagement emails out of our database because we had all of our members in our database, and then we had to export to MailChimp. MailChimp needs another list all the time. Then we couldn't. So we ended up, they were disjointed. But we've actually contracted to somebody to come in. So our database is at one point of truth and our emails go out. Just another thing too, we're a slightly unusual association because our members have to be members, but we realise that our members are our ageing workforce, but their children work for them and we're not hearing from them. So we've set up a youth council and we're bringing in the next group. So Dad retires, Sarah or Johnny's coming up. We're talking to them now to get them engaged before they become our member. Just, a couple of things.
That's a great idea. I love that. Have you started it yet? Or
yeah, and we have
how's it going?
We have a waiting list to get onto the youth council.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. When back when I was doing membership, I know one of the things we were tasked with was with our aging professionals was how do we keep them engaged? And so we were looking more for mentorship. So we started looking at, we had this incredible vast of passion and knowledge and experience. How do we keep them engaged with with our association? And so we were looking at low time commitment, but really high value on what they could do. And if it was mentoring, or if it was, engaging with different types of knowledge sharing that they could do. But that could be something too, is looking at how do you keep them engaged, and do you then have a different price point? If they're not a full member, is there a way that they can still be engaged and still, provide revenue to the association, but not be there? Donna, you brought up that question about the people that are leaving, not renewing, right? I think it was you who brought that up. One thing that might be interesting, and you might have already done this, is to take a look at the people who did not renew, like this last year, and then look at what they were doing, the 12 months ahead of time.
Yep.
Or 24 months ahead of time, and see if you see any little trends or patterns, and then see if you have any of those people now that are starting. So maybe they don't show up in person, or maybe, I don't know what it is, but maybe you could look and see what that is to try to help identify or maybe it's after so many years. Maybe it's, after 5 years, they then, aren't renewing. Then why is it that they're not renewing? And maybe that would be a laser point and I'm just making this up, but if that was after 5 years, you see a fall off, maybe it's at that year 3 or 4 to see what what would really help them do their job better or be better at their professional or help them with their career development. So that's just a thought when you brought that up.
That's a great idea to add to my list of
Mm.
things to do.
Jen, can I just ask a question around what investment we need to be thinking about in terms of our time and or our organisation's time in terms of really digging deep into this data? Because I totally get your point that, and I think we all struggle with trying to find the perfect system to do it for us, and rather than get stuck on that, just get on with it.
Mhm.
But what's your experience in terms of what's needed? Is it something we should just be saying, right, we need to at least one person needs to be focusing for a couple of hours a week on this as a question, for example, or is it bigger than that? I kind of get an idea of scale of what kind of investment we'd need to put in.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the main point is looking at what do you want to answer and lasering
Mm,
that. And if there's like one question, like Donna's, why are people not renewing? So that could be a starting point
mm,
to look at why aren't they renewing and then scope it on how do you isolate that and what data you have. I've worked from my spreadsheets when I did the ROI report. I did 5 audits because our president didn't believe it at first. She thought the numbers were too strong. And so, literally, because we were doing a white paper, it helped us internally make our decisions. It helped our board commit to, and we expanded. We changed what we were doing and expanded because of the ROI it was bringing to the individuals coming into us. So that process for me was very consuming because we had to make sure 100% it was, we were putting out to the industry. But even internally, you can take a look and say, what is the one point you want to start at? And, what data do you currently have? And if you don't have the data, then how do you incorporate that? Is it adding it to the new member, list, or is it, a couple questions, or the questions that you ask at your events, or even if it's a webinar, or, um, and how if it's your young individuals, your students going to professional, is there an incentive for them that they can get a free, they can win a free membership? And I know sometimes with, with prizes, you have to be careful depending on the industry, but if they fill out or they do a call, what points, what do you have, what do you want to answer? And then really prioritizing that. And I've worked with groups where we were going through change and, uh, the team members wanted all, you know, different stats. And we ended up going, okay, well, with the CEO, what are the 5 goals? And these are the 5 goals that we need to work towards. And everything else needs to be benched. Great ideas, but let's bench it because as a team, we need to make sure that was the priority. So I think that's one of the key things is making sure whoever, if it's for yourself, if you're working with a board or other groups, is just making sure that there's a clear direction on what you want to focus, what you have, and then what data can you get that you're currently not getting. The scope of that, of how much time you put or what you have, is obviously going to change. I've worked with other groups where, we had a flash data center. You hit one button and I could drill down, into it and you could slice it. And that was a totally different thing, but, had its own different, you had a lot more people you were dealing with working through that. So I think it can work on either end. And I'm obviously passionate about this space. I've worked in the States and other places. I love New Zealand. When I talked to Brett and he told me about your community and knowing associations, the last year I wanted to contribute more. So if anyone wants to chat anytime, just to jump on a little call and brainstorm about like, what you want to do, I'm more than happy to do that because I'm passionate about this space, like a 20-minute, 30-minute call. And I would happy to talk through that with you and help you if that's helpful at all. Did that help answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it's so overwhelming because there is so
Mm,
many data points and
mm,
you can get lost in it. And then,
mm,
4 years can go by now trying to figure out how do we manage the data, and that could be a valuable time to be making decisions that are going to impact your next 4 years.
I think that's the biggest thing though, isn't it? Like when you think about it, is it, yeah, we use our AMS system. Like I know there's one that, like engagement scoring, call it whatever you like, where if a member opens a newsletter, they get 1 point. If they turn up to an event, they get 5 points. And at the end of the year, whatever they do, at the end of the year, you can basically rank your engagement of your members and you'll guarantee that well, pretty much sure that the ones at the bottom aren't going to renew. And there are systems that can do that, but is that something that we should look at? Because not all computer systems do that, not all AMSs do that for us. Or should we then set up another spreadsheet and have that in there? Or are we just really, because I think that's as we had the conversation before, was that the problem with New Zealand, well, in America they use data to make decisions, right? In New Zealand, what we tend to do, we know everybody, so we'll be right. So our data's in our heads, and sometimes that lets us down. So how do we start? Is that the best way to do it, or what? That's more the question that I've got because I don't know myself, you know.
From my perspective of working across different groups, I've been fortunate to be able to work with different teams and really get into their space and work with them. So I've seen groups work differently, but I do think it does come back to what are you trying to answer? So if the question is, if there is a system that works for you, then that's great. I would focus in on what are you really trying to look at? And it could be looking at, you know, so Brett, what would be an example of if you said somebody was not engaged, what would that look like?
Um, they don't open they don't open any communications, even if it's a direct email or an EDM. They don't respond to a direct email. They don't turn up to any events. They just, that's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it could be then looking at, those lists of people who've not attended your in person. And, maybe they attended, and then people who haven't attended, or they didn't attend last year, or they haven't attended the last 2 or 3 years, and then lasering in on them and seeing if you can break it down by, whatever, if you have some different demographics. And if you don't, then you could, start putting in a plan to that. But if it's, the different ways that you segment them to see if there's across the board, is it why they're not engaging? If it's email, maybe it could be looking at the emails and isolating the people who aren't opening the email and, doing it that way. So it could be you could have like a scoring system and go through and set that up, or it could be just saying, you know what, the people who don't come, those are the people we lose the most because the in-person is such a valuable piece of that. But maybe you have people that come to these learning circles. I think this is brilliant. I love when that you get together and you share these ideas, and that this is an ongoing thing that you can come, wherever you are. It's a low entry point for everyone. But then obviously your in-person meetings is where all the connections happen, right? So maybe you can look at both and see who's not coming in person, who's not coming to your learning circles, who's not opening emails, and who are those individuals, and then figuring out how to reach out to them to why they're not engaging with you.
And
I
that's
don't
the
know.
thing.
Other thoughts? What do you guys think? Brett,
No,
what do you think?
and that's the thing, isn't it? Is it 6 months or 8 months into the year? If you
Yeah.
know you've got those members, shouldn't we be targeting them? And it's not, if they're not engaging with a newsletter or an email, it's got to be something else. So is it a phone call? Is it a text? Is it something? Because you want them to be engaged members. Like I've got a member who emails me once a week. And we're about to catch up for lunch. And next time I'm in Auckland. So it's like that's how he wants to engage. That's perfect.
Mhm.
But he never opens any emails, and he never actually he emails me, and we have a conversation. But that's a different type of engagement because he never opens any e-newsletters, and he doesn't come to any events. But he engages this way. So there's so many different ways to engage, isn't there? It's just how do we get that data and use that data better?
Mhm.
There's the other end of it as well, too. I was just thinking about some of those questions you have about, I mean, I can tell you kind of who opens our email, well, sort of cut off MailChimp, and I can sort of see who comes to events. I'd have to do quite a lot of jiggery pokery to figure out who isn't engaging. And maybe that's where AI comes in, to start loading data and looking for the missing piece, because finding the missing piece actually isn't all that easy. We have a situation where we're a non-regulated industry, but about a third of our members have to be members to do the job they're doing for a government department. They tend to be the ones that aren't very engaged and are quite hard to get to, because they're only members because they have to be. And so we know they do value very specific learning. So we do an online symposium for them, which we're doing this year, but we still won't get anything like the number of people that are in it. It's just a really interesting thing. It's easy to figure out who is doing something. I find it harder to figure out who isn't doing something.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And, that could even be going old school and going Excel and taking out who, and then removing the people that, aren't duplicates or whatever it is. And, um, just trying to get, so you can make those, I guess it comes down to making quicker decisions, identifying what you want to decide, making the best decision that you can with that data, and then going from that. When we were going through COVID, and, I've been doing hybrid events since 2010, and now I'm just doing more engagement strategy overall. But, when we were doing those events, we had a snapshot of the entire event that they could go through. And, there were sessions that they always thought everybody needs these sessions. And then they would go through, and then they would realize the attendance numbers really weren't there. And so they were able to make decisions going, okay, well, now for the meeting next year, this is what some of the data is telling us, so we can, improve that. But I think sometimes we feel we have to do it right. We need the right systems, and then we lose the time of making those quick decisions.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I'd just like to share thanks. Thanks, Jen, for your presentation so far. It's been, and listening to the conversations, it's been really, really insightful. I'm from the NZ Airports Association, and I just wanted to share that we're in the process of implementing a new CRM or AMS, whichever way you want to cut it. And one of the drivers for us is our data was sitting in different silos. So someone on the call was talking about they've got MailChimp, they've got spreadsheets, and different people were across different parts of it. And so it was all just a bit too messy, really. And so we're bringing it all into one system. And one of the key drivers is to see who is engaging with us, and just taking care of that membership journey. So taking care of our members. And so things like someone was talking earlier about how they have that phone call, and that's quite important for us to do that early on in the piece. But also we have the ability, because we don't have lots of members, to be able to do that, later on through the piece as well. So, and our members tend to be that little bit older, so they don't mind a phone call. But something I'm really interested in looking at, which is slightly different, and I think it's different from what you've touched on today, but it is kind of related. We run webinars, and we run conferences where people produce lots of really great content, and I want to be able to repurpose that content. So I also see that as data or information, and I want to be able to repurpose that for different audiences. So I'm really keen on exploring that in future, and that's maybe a conversation I might have with you offline, or others if you have an interest in that. So yeah, for example, someone might give a really neat webinar presentation and share our slides, and I'd be really keen to put that into another format, perhaps for a younger audience that couldn't attend or would like to see it in a, they don't want to engage for 45 minutes, but they might be keen to look at something for, 5 minutes or something like that. So yeah, I just wanted to share that. That's where I'm at with our journey.
Catherine, I just need to ask you, what AMS system are you going with?
Zoho.
Oh, you're going with Zoho. Okay, thank you. I may have a conversation with you sometime.
Please do. Yeah. So it's very, very early stages. We haven't gone live yet. We're about to do that. So yeah, please feel free to reach out.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you.
Hey,
Exciting
just
times. And thank you, Catherine. And that's great what you're doing, looking at the content and how you repurpose that to those different audiences and values. So I absolutely would be happy to brainstorm or share ideas with you too. That's absolutely brilliant. Some of the online sessions were rated really, really high, even over the in-person, and we found that shocking. And the reason I bring this up is because people could see more content. The information, so Catherine, what you're doing and serving up, looking at what you have, and then figuring out how you can either, condense it or repurpose it or share it with other people that weren't there is so valuable because, groups can dive into that. You don't, it was a really interesting thing when we saw that to just see it was more of what that they had access to. So. And also great with your CRM that you were looking at how do you merge that. I think that is a great point that you brought up, that as you're building or evolving with your technology, always looking at how these things support each other, integrate with each other, even if it's a short term or long term, to see how you can build with that data. So
Yeah. So we're collecting who's turning up to everything. And so then we can map that engagement journey. So so they might be turning up to a webinar or an online meeting, or they might come to an event, and it's just saying who's opening our emails, who's opening our EDMs. It's like, okay, who is connected? But I really like that point someone else made earlier. They might not be coming to any events, but they might just be reading your newsletter, and that still might be enough. Like, people have different needs from their engagement, and sometimes I think we get a little bit anxious because maybe all they're doing is opening the one email we send a month, but that's maybe all that they need. So it's I like that point somebody made earlier too.